Welcome back to another special episode of The Unknown. Very quickly, my name is Michael Volpe. I live in Chicago, Illinois, and I write at michaelvolpe.substack.com, and my broadcast partner is Richard Luthman. I don't know where he lives, except it's in Lee County, Florida, or usually that's where he is, named after Robert E. Lee. He lost the Civil War, but as a consolation prize, he gets a county named after him. And we are joined by State Senator Mark Finchem, a Republican. You're in Maricopa County. I don't know if you live in Phoenix or one of the surrounding areas, but you live around Phoenix, right?
No, I actually live in a suitcase. I live in Legislative District 1. The county seat of that is Prescott, Arizona, about an hour and a half north of Phoenix. That's my home because we have to live in a district. And then during session, like Monday through Thursday until it would seem the cows come home this year, I have a place down in Phoenix that I have kind of a VRBO arrangement. But no, once we sine die, once the last day of session, I will be back up in Prescott enjoying the cooler weather than the valley. It's about 10 to 15 degrees cooler.
All right. So I got up, hopefully I won't mispronounce his name. I think it's Quang Nguyen. He is in the House. He's a Democrat. And you are not. Oh, and before we start, we interviewed you last year. At the time, the ad hoc Joint Legislative Committee on Family Court Orders was going on. Now, you guys are taking the knowledge and trying to reform the family court system, which I think everyone agrees, and before and after the hearings needs a lot of reforms. And you put together a slate of bills, but you're not happy with this guy. Why aren't you happy with this guy?
Well, first of all, just to correct the record, Representative Nguyen is a Republican.
He's a Republican. I'm sorry.
He's not a Democrat. And he happens to be my.
Uh-oh.
Hold on.
We lost him.
All right. We had lost you there for a second. So he's a Republican. I think you were going to say he happens to be your representative. Am I right?
Yes. So, So Representative, if you want to edit this out, Representative Nguyen is my representative. I'm one of his constituents in Legislative District 1. So he's the chair of the Judiciary Committee over in the House.
But what did he do to get you upset?
Well, he held, so let me back up for a minute so that folks know the context of this. Last summer, we held about four or five family court orders reform hearings, to which the Senate issued a report, almost never done, by the way. We had an ad hoc committee, joint ad hoc committee between the House and Senate, had lots of stakeholders, judges, lawyers, victims rights people, people that they know what the hell they're doing. All right. We had testimony from them, and then we put together a package of bills that were very specific. Each one of them addressed a thing. So I have a belief that omnibus bills are the bane of our existence because it only takes one signature of an out of control Democrat madwoman governor to veto the bill. Okay. So instead, we wanted to have 13 bites at the apple, which all addressed a different thing. So, for example, one of those bills would have recognized the civil rights of a child to have equal access to both parents. That's not in law right now. In fact, you talk to some law enforcement people, they don't believe that children have civil rights, which is antithetical to our Constitution, but goes to show you that it's not a focus of the law enforcement or the judicial community. And it's supposed to be reinforcing the best interests of the child. That is supposed to be the pole star of all family court jurisprudence of the law. But now it seems like it's in the best interest of lawyers and psychologists' pocketbooks, billable hours. So what we did in that particular piece of legislation is we put into law, or attempted to put into law if it hadn't been held, that there is a civil right of a child to have equal access to both parents.
Now,
Period.
does that in like practical terms, does that mean a presumption of 50-50 custody?
That's a presumption of equal access.
Okay.
Not equal custody.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Now, in Arizona, and the next piece of that, think about this as a decision tree. All right. We start with the child has a civil right to equal access to both parents. In Arizona law, under Section 25-403, there is a schedule of mitigating factors, including domestic violence, sexual assault, violence against others, drunk driving, those kinds of things. So when you, excuse me just a second so I can hang up on that person. When you are engaged in bad behaviors, you would think that the court would recognize, even for the purpose of temporary orders, that bad behaviors won't be tolerated. In Arizona, we had this case called Gutierrez. I want to say it was about a year ago, where the Arizona appeals court said, well, they're temporary, so you don't have to go through all that trouble. Well, here's the problem. Some of those temporary orders can last 9 years. They're not time bound like 120, 180 days. All right. So the interesting piece of this is this entire package of statutes not only had a report put out supporting all of the legislation, but the bills and the fact sheets were passed by the Senate and sent over to the House, where they did their own fact sheets. Yet Quang Nguyen, the chairman of Judiciary, put out on Twitter, apparently he doesn't like to communicate with colleagues, these are stupid bills, and I'm holding all of them. All
right. And Representative Nguyen was not one of the members of the committee. So he's blocking it, but he's your colleague. Have you talked to him privately? Has he told you anything? Has he said anything beyond a tweet for these are stupid bills?
Not a word. In fact, I've known for quite some time that he has a personal animus towards me. Never mind the kids and the victims that have been screwed by his action. So I'm gobsmacked that the committee would vote present instead of voting for bills when they had all of this information in front of them. Well, I can only assume that the chairman had some kind of influence in that.
Okay, and he's the head of, I think, the House Judiciary Committee, which is where all of these would start. So he's got a lot of power when it comes to a bill like this, right?
Well, actually, no. These bills started in the Senate. They were delivered to the House, basically wrapped that while Republicans voted present, all the Democrats, 3 Democrats on the Judiciary Committee, knowing full well that we have an incredibly broken family court system in Arizona, voted no. So this isn't just a Republican thing. This is the party of no, Democrats, voting no on everything if it has a Republican sponsor. And I just, quite frankly, the people that are watching this, the victims, the lawyers, the judges, they should be absolutely outraged at the behavior of the Arizona legislature, particularly the House of Representatives. These are real victims that came to the legislature for relief. Then you have a liaison from the court system, never mind the separation of powers issues that causes, comes in and says, well, these bills are problematic for the court. Really? I don't give a bloody damn, because it's the legislature that sets policy. It is the court that rules on the cases.
Right. Rich, you've got a few questions?
Yeah, the hearings that you did, the ad hoc committee took over 40 legislative hours and untold prep hours beyond that, produced 13 really strong bills. Without going through all of them, can you name 3 bills that the depth of which most directly preserves what you and others have called, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'll say I have called and others have called the family court racket? And
Yeah.
can you name the stakeholder groups you believe that killed them? And I'll throw some names out there: judges, the bar lawyers, psychologists, legislative leadership, or somebody else. Can you give us an idea?
Well, we've got some self-serving individuals in the complainant world. Okay, so there's a couple of parents that are out there that they somehow, I guess, they want to create a cottage industry that people will turn to them.
Oh, wait, hold on a second, Senator. I'm getting a call from Nguyen. I'm going to pick it up. This could be your buddy. Hello, this is Richard Luthman.
Richard, this is Representative Nguyen.
Hi, how are you, Representative Nguyen?
Well, call me Quang. Yeah, just call me Quang. I'm off today.
Okay, so I have a real question for you. What's going on in Arizona with reform? How come you don't like family court reform? Are you against families?
No, that's you need to re-ask the question politely. I'm calling you because I want to make sure you understand. But if you're gonna put the question that way, it's like when the last time you beat your wife.
Well, listen. I would love to hear from you. I've talked to Senator Finchem. I'm actually talking to him right now, and he's explained that this has been a lot of legislative work, a lot of legislative hours, and it sounds like a personal animus that you have, and that you're in line with lockstep with someone who I believe to be a statist named Katie Hobbs. Are you like Katie Hobbs is like bag boy now, or what's the deal?
Okay. Are you going to restart the conversation, or should I just hang up?
So you tell me what you want.
I beat my wife.
Okay, when's the last time that Katie Hobbs beat you?
Okay, let me put it this way. I have heard 5 of Finchem's bills. As a matter of fact, yesterday I heard 2 of them. So whatever you hear from Mr. Finchem is not right, because policy is policy. Personality has nothing to do with it. I heard 5 of his bills, 2 yesterday.
So this is not a personal animus between you and Mark Finchem?
Absolutely not. There are so many people that don't like me. As a matter of fact, Richard, I have pushed 5 of my bills aside because somebody has better policy than I do. So that's the kind of legislator I am.
So what's wrong with these bills?
Family court bill in the House of Representatives. I have heard every one of them in the House of Representatives.
Okay, so do you think that Rep Finch and Rep Fink and Rep Keschel are wrong? They're your colleagues in the House. Are they wrong? They're behind this with Senator Finchem. What are they doing wrong?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, Richard, are you asking me, or are you going to talk over me?
No, I want to ask you. I'm going to give you as much time as you want to tell me.
Okay, then stop interrupting me. Keschel and Fink actually came to me on the House floor to ask me not to hear Finchem's bill. I have 2 victim advocates call me up and said, these bills will hurt domestic violence victims. When you have advocate groups and victims calling you, and I can send you those emails, but please don't accuse me of anything. Keschel, Fink, Pena all asked me not to hear Finchem's bills.
Okay, so they asked. My question
I heard
is
5.
But my question is, there's nothing there in the package of 13 bills that's important.
Nothing, everything. As a matter of fact, yesterday, when I heard the bill, one of the victim and victim advocates testify in front of me. And one of them actually talked to me on Sunday for 45 minutes. He refused to accept their request for a meeting. He's refused. He turned them down 5 times. And all of these bills, I have 2 emails. I could text it to you if this is your cell phone.
Yeah, I'd love to. You have my I sent you my email. You can email them to me as well.
Right, sir. But if you're gonna ask me a question, please don't accuse me of a crime before asking me a question.
I'm sorry to come off as outraged, but I'm not nearly as outraged as some of the parents out there that have been in this system, which appears to, I think, everybody as legalized extortion. And I would think that a legislator would want to help move the ball down the road, not be Dr. No.
Right. And I moved all of them down the road. I moved every single family court bill out of the House of Representatives. Everyone, you know why I moved them? Because I sat down with the victims. I sat down with the advocate groups. And if all these families are outraged, none have ever written to me. And you want to know something, Richard? Every time I do something slightly wrong, I get 500 emails telling me I've done something wrong. But I have so far 0 emails from victims or victim groups. Okay? And all I heard was from 2 advocate groups that are telling me, and I will be happy to text those messages to you.
I would love to take a look at them.
To hear them. Okay? So the question is, why did Nguyen hear all the family court bills in the House of Representatives? Probably 10 or 12 of them. So the headline should say, why did he not hear the Senate bills?
Yeah, tell me why. Answer that. Answer that question.
Including Keschel, yes, including Keschel, and including the expert with Fink, and including 2 advocates group, and said, these are dangerous bills. Please do not hear them. Okay.
Well, then that's news. That is news. That is something for me to look at.
Deal.
Okay. Then that's news. What you can do is you can send those to me, and you say you haven't heard from advocates. You didn't go to any of the ad hoc hearings, did you? I didn't see you there. I only saw Keschel, and I saw Fink, and
because I'm in the criminal bill side, sir.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm not making any accusations. I know you're a busy guy, but there are a lot of people that were really hurt that testified at that. So I'm going to make some phone calls and follow up.
The same people that were there, Richard, the same advocate groups that were there, they're the ones that contacted me. And Representative Rachel Keschel came to me and said the same thing, and Representative Fink came to me and thanked me for hearing her bills and Keschel's bills and Kenya's bill, and asked me not to hear those bills. Now, once again, Mr. Finchem goes after me for 2 years now. I have never said a thing, not a personality. I heard his bill in 23. I heard his bills in 24. I heard his bill in 25. And I heard 5 of his bills this year, 2 yesterday. So whatever you may think the personality is, I'm all about policy. And when these advocates group are coming to me and tell me that these are bad policy, then I have the responsibility of not hearing them.
So my question is: Are 2 of those advocacy groups the Arizona Bar Association and the Arizona Judges? Are those groups 2 people that are lobbying you, the judges and the lawyers?
Absolutely not. They're victims, sir. You got to stop insulting these people. They are advocates because they're victims of domestic violence. Both of these ladies are victims of the court in Prescott, and wherever the second lady is, both of them are the victims, sir. They are not working for the court. They are victims.
Okay. I will take what I will take a look at what you have.
Why you just accused me?
Well, no, because the optics of it are terrible. You have to say 0 for 13 is a pretty poor batting average, no matter what game you're playing, whether it's basketball or football or baseball.
Why didn't you come to me and ask me like a real journalist would? Which I would. Here I am. I don't have to call you at all. As a matter of fact, I can just not call you because you already vilified me.
Well, you already killed the bills. You know, that's the thing. It's like, you know, you got parents that are dying over here. They're spending their life savings in this churn, and you have kids whose lives are being harmed irreparably. We got to wait till 2027 now? You know, that's just it. We waited 24, 25, 26, 27. Get a kid who's 6 years old. At that point, he's, you know, 12, 13 before he sees meaningful change. I think he might have been damaged, or she might have been damaged for life by that point. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the kids. You know, you had something. A lot of time was spent in the legislature over the past few years to try to, you know, get good information. And you're telling me that this is, you know, a shadow game in the legislature that's killing these bills. You know, I think that the people, that the stakeholders, that the families have a right to know what happened.
If you would stop talking for a second, the chairman's job to make sure that bills don't come out. And these are bad bills, according to Cashel and Fink. So stop with that pontification that you have right now. I'm telling you right now, it is my job to be the freaking chairman to kill that bill.
Okay. So then
nobody advocates for children more than I have, because I'm the guy working on human trafficking, sex trafficking, making sure adults don't spend time playing with children. I'm the guy that sponsors all those bills.
Great. And that's great stuff. And that's very important. I'm just concerned about the family court.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And all the family courts out of Cashel and Fink are all heard in my committee. And all the victims were there testifying for these bills. They were all there to testify for all these bills. And I got them all passed out of my committee. But when these same people testifying for those bills in my committee came to me and said, my gosh, don't do this.
Okay.
Hang on. Sure. I'm home all by myself, so you don't have to worry about anybody else giving this.
Okay.
Hang on. Good evening, State Representative Nguyen. I want to follow up on an email last night, and I share a brief overview about concerns with Senator Finchem's family court-related bill. This is a victim. I've attached a one-page snapshot for your preview. I worked on the proposed amendment for nearly all of Senator Finchem's family court bills, except for SB 1650, and met with him to discuss those fixes. Unfortunately, after that meeting, he stopped responding to my follow-up, as well as the follow-up from the AZ state parents, and even from Representative Cashel. As the result, none of the concern raised by protected parents, AZ Safe Parents is a victim advocating group, raised by protected parents or advocates have been addressed. It would be helpful if I can provide you with a full set of details, amendment recommendations, and analysis that I sent to Senator Finchem over 2 months ago. I'm also available to meet to discuss any of this further at your convenience, and I met with her, sir.
Yeah, I think that's great. I have one question for you, and then we can talk a little further. Yeah. I'm going to have to talk to everybody. What's wrong with the jury trials bill in family court? Well, how come you didn't like that one? You do criminal stuff. You think jury trials are probably the cornerstone of criminal law and the finders of fact. I think, you know, what's wrong with that family court jury trial bill?
Because there are poison pills in between. I don't have my computer in front of me. Chairman Nguyen, one more, sir. One more, and I'll let you talk. Chairman Nguyen, I wanted to reach out to you and first thank you for the support you've shown in helping move our child safety bill through the House. Your willingness to listen and engage has made the real difference. Hearing your story about your father's mistreatment in a medical facility also stay with me. Never mind my dad. I testify at the ad hoc committee on family court and have also spoken before your committee on some of these bills. I want to raise my concern because I think you will listen. I have 10 years of experience in family court as a protected parent. I know family court in this of a judge here, sir, in Prescott, in the city that I live in. Prior to the session, Senator Finchem told me he would share with me what he has worked on with us, and as we worked on these bills in the House. That never happened. Since then, I sent multiple emails. I'm sorry, my Facebook keeps switching. Since then, I sent multiple emails. Let's see, I lost my spot. Offering assistance, asking what he was working on, suggesting amendment, and raising serious safety concerns with some bills as they come out, all without a single response. He continues to advance. Oh my gosh, my Facebook is flipping on me. He continues to advance legislation that poses real risk for protective parents and children, particularly in the case involving domestic violence. The lack of stakeholders' engagement here is deeply concerning, especially when there are people actively trying to help get these policies right. He would make some amendments, but others there is no help for. Given your leadership of these issues, I wanted to bring this to your attention and ask if you have any guidance on how to ensure these concerns are meaningfully considered before these bills move forward. I would hate to see all of the progress on family court reform just go down the drain because of an unwillingness to get a buy-in from affected Arizona parents. These are not court people, Richard.
Okay. My question, still is the jury stuff. That has nothing to do with domestic violence. I think that it can only help in domestic violence circumstances. I think judges are trained to weed that out with motions and with emergency hearings. But I think that the juries can find fact as well. I just don't see how a domestic violence concern is raised with respect to the jury bill. And I think there are a couple others that don't have stakeholders. I'm just wondering, how is it that this entire production goes into place with the ad hoc committee, and now we're a year later and we have bupkis. We have 0 for 13 on the bills. There's no reform at all.
The ad hoc committees came out, and they asked the people that testify in that committee came out to inform me that, listen, this is dangerous. So I'll give you an example. There's a bill that I almost put it on my agenda. It's not Mr. Finchem's bill, but it's about family court with the presumption of 50-50 sharing parental time. So when I read that, now I've never been through a divorce, never had any problems. So I sat down and I analyzed the bill and I said, oh, this sounds like a great bill. There's nothing wrong with 50-50% time. And I sat there and I read the bill and I read the bill. All of a sudden I got a phone call from a lady named Salazar. The last name is Salazar. And I said, how can I help you? And she said, have you seen that bill about equal parenting time? And I said, yeah, it sounds like a great bill. I'm going to put it on my agenda. She said, no, I'm a victim of domestic violence. And she was at the ad hoc committee and she was trying to get an appointment from Mr. Finchem unsuccessfully. So I said, what's wrong with this bill? It's not a Finchem bill. I said, what's wrong with the bill? And she said to me, when you have a presumption of 50-50, the judge immediately defaults to that. I said, can you prove that? He said, I can prove that through studies after studies. When you have presumption, they go there. And I said, well, what's wrong with that? And she said, they forget the domestic violence factor of the court case. And so a child would be sharing 50-50% time with the parent that may be extremely abusive. And she said, I'm trying to get to the bill sponsor, and Ms. Keschel also trying to get to the bill sponsor. And Ms. Keschel also called me and she said, this is bad, Quang. If you hear this bill, the children will be going to a home of a domestic violence and agitator of violent person. And I said, I had no idea this was the case. So that came directly from Keschel and the victim. So when you see me not hear a bill that says 50-50%, you will
got you. Listen. So I would want potentially. Let me go talk to Cashel and Fink and others, and I'm going to come back to you. I may want to do a formal interview with you with Michael Volpe because he's on the same page as you about 50-50. You know, 50-50 was passed in Florida and passed in other places, and it's not the end of the world. I think it's actually it's helped curb some of the acrimony and litigation. There are benefits to 50-50 as an adjudicative presumption, and we can talk about that. But I do need to get off the phone now because I do have a 2:30 to finish. But thank you for calling me, and I will get back to you once I've done my homework with Fink and with Cashel and with some others, and give you some follow-up questions on this. Thank you for giving some clarity, because the way it was presented, it was that it's 0 for 13, that nothing even came up, but not just nothing that was Finchem's, nothing that was family court at all. And my concern is that, and I think that Finchem would agree, and I think the others would agree, it's not about the name on the bill, it's about whether the bill's a good bill. I think that you said that too just now, that if you have a good bill, you're going to put it forward. And if that's the case, I want to get talking to the people that I need to talk to that are the stakeholders, and we'll come back to you and see what's going on. Okay?
You got it. And I pushed 5 of my personal bills out. I did not even hear 5 of my personal bills because I thought Cashel had a better policy that was more important, and I pushed hers out.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for your time.
No personality, sir. All right. Take care. Bye.
Okay. All right. We are back. That we didn't mean for that to happen, but I think it's more interesting that way. And State Senator Finchem, you left towards the end, but you heard him. He once said none of this is personal. 2, they're bad bills that domestic violence victims, advocates are calling him, emailing him, and they're saying put an end to it. Your response to what he said?
Not likely. So I checked while I was off. I checked with Representative Fink, and she said that, well, you know, I had a couple of your bills I wanted to see an amendment on, but I didn't tell him to kill your bills. Now I have a call in to Representative Cashel. I'm pretty sure that she didn't say that. So now he has something to explain.
Right. I want to
claims that just a minute. Right now I'm boiling mad and I'm just trying to contain myself.
Yeah.
I would like to know who these victims' rights organizations are that step forward. I think, you know, Richard, you asked a great question. Was it the court? Was it the lawyers? Notice he didn't say who it was. So here's another little piece. March 18th, sends a text to me and to another lobbyist. His bills are dead. Wait a minute. Didn't he say that he heard all the bills? No. What he did is he might have calendared a few of them. That's not the same as hearing them.
Wait, explain for people who don't. What's the difference between calendar and hearing?
You can put a bill on the calendar and hold it at the last minute and not hear it. Okay. So, yeah, there was a hearing yesterday. And we have hearings that are going on both in the House and the Senate at the same time. Okay. I was unable to go advocate for this bill yesterday. So it was basically, it was voted down by all 6 Republicans voting present instead of voting for the bill. Democrats, all 3 Democrats voted against it. All right. So this is, I think, Senate Bill 1656. Pretty important bill. Now, here's the interesting piece about this. None of my bills dealt with domestic violence. So for the individual by the last name of Snodgrass to make that claim, it's just patently untrue. Now, there are other representatives that had bills that dealt with domestic violence. One of them we passed through the Senate. In fact, I opined on it about the 2 young children that are now in a grave because the court failed. Now, the reality of what has been done here, because these bills, quote, his bills are dead, one of the bills would have required the court to have an evidentiary hearing and make a finding on temporary court orders that dealt specifically with the top factors: domestic violence, sexual violence, violence against others. One of the other ones, in fact, I talked to the Yavapai County presiding judge just not more than an hour ago about this very thing, would have ensured that children have a civil right to equal access to both parents. For the longest time, we've used this term in the best interest of the child. And it's turned into in the best interest of billable hours. By lawyers, by psychologists, by you name all of the allied people that are involved in the court system, it has turned into a cottage industry. The National Brooklyn Playbook is at work in Arizona.
Yep.
And that's what these bills were focused on. What he ignored, what the members of that committee ignored, including Democrats. Not only was there 40 hours, there was a report that came out of that 40 hours of testimony. It was widely circulated. In fact, I'll be sending a copy of it to all of them Monday morning so that they can reread what all of the stakeholders had to say instead of a couple of self-serving individuals that may have contacted the chairman at the last minute. This was hundreds of hours of curated material, of counseling from lawyers who are in the system, who see it from the inside out, from family court judges who know all the places where it's broken. So to make the claim that these are stupid bills, quite frankly, the chairman's got some real explaining to do, especially when I talked to at least one of the people he named and said, no, I did not tell him to kill your bills. I told him I was hoping for a couple of amendments. And of course, I asked the representative, why didn't you call me about the amendments?
Right.
Crickets, but okay. That's not a call to kill a bill, though.
Right. I can tell you that Rachel Keschel, who you couldn't get on the phone, likes this bill because she was defending it to me. But I did want to ask you about this. So 1329, now in your, I think this is a press release, you say 1329 provides liability protection for court-appointed professionals acting within the scope of their duties without reasonable safeguards. Quality professionals are increasingly reluctant to serve, leaving courts without experienced evaluators and advisors. It looks like you're trying to protect these court appointees, even though for hours and hours and hours you heard nothing but horror stories about these court appointees. Why did you frame the press release the way you did?
Michael, what we were talking about is a standard of care that they have to subscribe to or they can't be used. It blocks people. It doesn't encourage people. It blocks people that do not abide by a standard of care. Because right now, there is no standard of care. It's the Kobe thing, which I know you know about. Court-ordered behavioral intervention. Might as well put a pile of money in the center of the courtroom and light it on fire.
Right.
All that is doing is lining the pockets of lawyers and psychologists who, by the way, more often than not, side with the abusive parent. Do you know why insurance companies won't pay for that kind of care? Because they don't subscribe to a standard of practice.
Right.
That's why. So what we were trying to do is prohibit the court from using people that don't subscribe to a standard of care. If they do subscribe to a standard of care, they don't need to have qualified immunity because they're already regulated by a board of psychiatric examiners because of a standard of care. That's what this is about.
When we were scheduling this, you said you had some maneuvering that you could make. Is there anything you can do to get around this guy or to get these bills through?
Well, we've got a couple that, let's see, I think we have two that we've been able to strike on to other bills over in the House. And right now, I don't really want to get into that because I want it to run its course so that nobody can interrupt it. It'll go, basically what happens is we strike it onto a bill in another committee with a willing sponsor, and then it goes to the floor, they vote it out, and it comes back to the Senate for concurrence.
All right, I got you. So
that's a vote of one person. That's me saying, yeah, I concur.
Right.
And then it's done. Okay.
And that's a
So
way to get it out of the Judiciary Committee and put it into
well, it's a way to make sure that the bill actually does get an opportunity to be voted on by the committee of the whole.
Okay.
So what folks might not know, we don't use Robert's Rules of Order for the legislature. We use Mason's rules, which is both legislatures and Congress use those rules. And there are some parliamentary procedures that you can use to move things around within the committee structure. But I wanted to verify with the two individuals that the chairman claimed came to him on the floor and asked to have those bills killed. One of them has said, no, I never said that.
Right. I know Rachel Keschel supports jury trials for custody. I think this is something that's been tried, and every time it gets voted down. If you could get that into law, and I think Hobbs would veto it if it did get out of the legislature, I think that would make a huge difference on its own. That would make the ad hoc committee and everything you guys did worth it, because that would be a huge reform that's very difficult to make into law.
I agree with you, Michael. And we've gotten a lot of pushback on that, which, by the way, when you get a lot of pushback on a bill from the people it's going to force to reform, you're probably over the target. Okay.
Right.
So we get this argument of, well, it's going to add cost to the county judicial system. Okay. Maybe. Hold on. I got a whole bunch of things to unpack here.
Right.
Then it's going to slow down the court system. Well, first of all, these kinds of trials are only going to be for the worst of the worst. 99% of these cases, once somebody think about it this way. You have a narcissistic jerk who is explained to by his attorney, look, you're a narcissistic jerk. And if you go in front of a jury, they're going to take your kids away from you. Now, this is the abusive parent who is suing the protector for full custody. That's the kind of case we're talking about here, okay? Those cases are so few and far between. The argument that it's going to increase cost, delay the court, we're going to have hundreds of juries, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's not going to happen because not only is the jury trial option a blessing, it's also a curse. So can we get that done? No, not under Katie Hobbs, but I would have loved to have seen her veto it.
Right.
Because that sets up a future governor, I don't know, Andy Biggs,
right,
to say yes, under certain conditions, under certain cases, yes, a jury trial. We're talking about permanent separation of children from their parents because one parent doesn't like the other one. That needs to go in front of a jury, not a judge who may have sympathies for one side or the other. By the way, to the question about Rachel Keschel saying kill my bills, that's kind of strange because Rachel had a huge influence in every single one of these bills.
Right.
She was part of the writing process, part of the research, part of the stakeholder meetings.
Mark, Senator, it doesn't make any sense that somebody who is sitting next to you doing hours upon hours of work on this thing would be there just to stand there to stab you in the back in the House. It makes what he said makes very little to no sense. It sounds a little bit more delusional than anything else. Now, I want to play devil's advocate for him. Okay, he said it wasn't personal. He said he has no ulterior motives. He said that there were two very legitimate reasons why the package that was introduced by you, the 13 bills, were no good. And he said blanketly was separation of powers and that victims raised safety concerns about protective parents and children. Can you address those two? And we'll say for the sake of argument that those are two valid concerns that he raises. Why are those valid concerns either overstated or untrue?
All right, first, let's take separation of powers first. The court does what it's told to do. Period. The legislature is the policy-setting body. There is no separation of powers issue. In fact, the only separation of powers issue I saw was for a member of the court's world testifying against a bill. That's a separation of powers issue. Why is the court's liaison acting like a lobbyist in a policy-setting body? And furthermore, why did the chairman allow that to happen? That's one of those questions that's going to hang out there for a while. So we, the legislature, are the policy-setting body. We tell the court what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Most judges absolutely agree with that, except the activists. Then they want to do what they damn well please anyhow. Now, the other question was about violence.
The same domestic violence concerns, protective mothers, violence against children. So all 13 of the bills that you proposed are defective because of domestic violence concerns. Can you address that one?
Well, actually, the only one that addresses domestic violence was a reformatting of 25403, which is it's the schedule of things that the court has to consider when entering an order for custody. Now, we have in Arizona right now, and this is, again, I'll go back to the Gutierrez decision, which I'm pretty sure the chairman of judiciary has absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. The Gutierrez decision, the trial court said, we're just going to make a finding on temporary court order and you're going to have to live with it. They appealed to it. The Arizona Appeals Court, and the argument was you didn't have an evidentiary hearing to hear about domestic assault, sexual assault, assault against other people, DUI. You didn't even hear about the evidence, why this parent should have less than 50-50 parenting time. The appeals court basically came back and said, well, we agree with the trial court because it's a temporary order. You don't have to worry about all of those factors. Wrong answer. That was put into statute by the legislature for the court to consider. In this case, the appellate court basically trampled all over the separation of powers and did what it damn well pleased, telling the respondent, oh no, nah, you don't have to show those things. We're just going to make it a temporary order. By the way, we've got temporary orders on the books here that are 9 years long. It's not a temporary order.
Right.
In to say, for temporary orders, you have to make a decision within, I forget if it's 180 or 120 days. A temporary order is designed to be temporary. And if there is a finding under 25403, for those that are watching, Arizona Revised Statutes 25-403 deals with the schedule of things that the court must consider in awarding parenting time and custody, okay? Well, we outlined that you need to protect these children from domestic violence, sexual violence, and even violent behavior against others. Road rage, for example, okay? If there are credible reports of that, or there are convictions, or whatever the evidence might be in an evidentiary hearing, that impacts the non-protective parent. Now, because that bill was killed, we are still in a steady state of nothing. The court doesn't have to consider it. It's not been rewritten. So what we did basically is we said, you've got temporary orders and you've got permanent orders. In the temporary orders, these are the at least 4 or 5 things that you have to consider. You shall consider these things. And you shall have a notation in the record of the finding. Permanent orders, you got to go through the whole list. Now, because that bill was killed, we have a steady state, just like it was yesterday. That's the only bill out of the 13 that dealt with domestic assault.
Right.
Okay, so now here's a follow-up for you. Okay, one of the things that he said when he was on, and he started reading a couple of emails, he made the claim that there were people, these 2 advocates whose emails we have not reviewed. He read them, but we haven't reviewed them. He said that they tried to reach out to you, they tried to reach out to the ad hoc committee, and they weren't able to reach you. Now, can you state for the record that your ad hoc committee, because I saw how you operated. It came as a surprise to me that he would say that that people were turned away. I don't think anybody was willfully turned away from that committee. When you with this committee, you and your colleagues, did you willfully turn anybody away who wanted to speak about the committee or wanted to submit evidence to the committee?
Not at all. In fact, we canceled the 5th committee because we didn't have anybody stepping forward any longer. I mean, we had, well, you saw it, Richard. I mean, I think the first committee hearing was 3 hours. The second one was 8.5 hours. The third was 3 or 4 hours. The fourth was 4 hours. And we tried to space them different times because we know some people have to work and some people have trouble getting in and all that. We had people who demanded to speak, and then when the day came, they said, oh, you know, I've changed my mind. Okay, look, we're not trying to force anybody to, we're not going to compel people to give testimony.
Yeah.
And the people, I've only heard one name, and I can say categorically that individual did testify. That individual did communicate with our policy advisor.
Yeah.
So it's just abjectly false. Now, as far as the other individual, I have no idea who he's talking about. Advocacy groups?
Yeah.
Just about all the advocacy groups. I mean, we've got probably 3 feet, a 3-foot high stack of documentation that has been curated by our policy advisor. I mean, I'll send you a picture of the stack if you want to see it.
Oh, I can imagine.
All right. So for individuals to say that they weren't heard, that I didn't return their phone calls, I get hundreds of phone calls a day. I get thousands of emails a week. Yeah. And we bucket those, we save those, we curate all that information. I dare say, I'm pretty sure, that he didn't even read the ad hoc committee report. Mm-hmm. That was the justification for every single one of these bills. So I've taken the liberty of having the Senate printing office print a fresh copy that'll be delivered to every one of these individuals Monday morning, so they can't say that they didn't get it.
Yeah. And
unfortunately, as you can see in the March 18th text that I sent to you,
yeah,
the bills are dead.
Right. Yeah. Just for the record, so that people that are watching can understand, the hearings were maybe 40 legislative hours. But tell me what went on behind the scenes. Who did you talk to? Who did your colleagues talk to? What type of investigation was carried out by you and your staff? What was done? How were these sausages made to create the report and these 13 bills? So what happened? What went into it?
Well, we had probably a half dozen stakeholder meetings with victim parents, and typically they're the protective parent. With Judge Swan, who is now retired, was probably one of the best family court judges in Arizona. He still works as a mediator for some cases, for select cases. We had no less than 4 family court attorneys, regular practitioners, who came in with, okay, if we tweak the law just a little bit here, we can probably have maximum effect without disrupting the whole system. Here's another example of a law. This came from one of the practitioners. We wanted to limit the amount of money that the court can award from one parent to the other for psychological intervention services and lawyer fees, putting a cap at $16,000 on, $8,000 for each thing. Judge Swan, brilliant jurist, said, well, I know what you're trying to do, but what if we do this? What if we set up a reserve that comes from the family estate so that both parents can draw on it? Think about that for a minute. That means that the abusive parent is going to get the message really quick. The longer they carry this out, the more they're going to have to pay out of pocket for vexatious litigation.
Right.
That was one of these bills.
Stops if it's one-sided, too one-sided. That's actually a brilliant idea.
That's right. That's
because
right.
the
So that was
stay-at-home parent runs out of
that,
money much quicker, or just the parent who made less, and
yeah.
that I see all the time.
So that is one of these so-called stupid bills that died.
Right.
That would have ended the
What
vast
is
majority of vexatious litigation.
what's that bill number?
I'd have to go back and look it up,
All right,
man.
I'll look it up. That's an excellent bill. That is an excellent bill.
Well, every one of these, that's why when I see this statement about, first of all, I never got a phone call from the chairman. The bills were introduced. He goes out to Facebook. Shame on Senator Finchem. These are stupid bills. I'm not going to hear them. Go on Facebook. I mean, it's already out there.
Right.
So for him to come back and say, I heard all of his bills, that's not true. That's patently false.
Yeah.
And then to say that all of the trying to create the straw man, all of these advocacy groups contacted him at the 11th hour to say, no, you got to stop these bills.
Right.
That's funny. We started this well, I think you guys were on. We started this journey April of 2025.
Yeah.
Right.
April 2025. And the very people that he claims told him to kill the bills had a hand in crafting these bills.
Right.
Now, they also had other bills, the Alex and Lydia bill, Representative Fink's bill. We amended it a little bit because we had some concerns about it in the Senate. She was very open to that process. We moved it through. I think we have to vote on it on the floor next week. It's going to pass. Now, it's likely that the social worker Hobbs will veto it. I'll be stunned if she doesn't, but let's hope she does. Okay. But interestingly enough, Representative Fink apparently didn't have so many concerns that she didn't pick up the phone and call me and ask me if I would amend my bill. That's typically how a member will treat another member. But I never got a phone call from the chairman. Instead, he takes out to Facebook and decides he wants to malign me and say that the bills are stupid. All right. That sure sounds like personal animus to me. So for him to make that claim that it's not, I think his actions speak otherwise.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Do you have anything specific on family courts, Mike? Because I want to talk about some larger issues raised by Wendy Rogers and others about Arizona and how the sausages are made, really. And we touched upon a few of them. Do you have any family court specific stuff?
No,
well, we've been talking about family court specific stuff.
Yeah, well, the most
you mean
important,
juvenile court?
No, I'm talking about this. When we had Wendy Rogers on a little while ago, she said that effectively with the social worker and the governor's office, that family court reform is dead, and that a Republican governor is the way forward. Families have, and the situation with Chairman Nguyen is it hurts because of all the hope that families had that the system might be reformed even a little bit, and that gets crushed. But it's even worse to the fact that this could potentially get to the governor's desk just to be crushed time after time after time. And it was her view that the most important question that's facing Arizona right now for people who are reform-minded people for family court is the election security issue and the ballot, and getting Republicans in from the governor on the top of the ballot on down so that legislation can get passed. Because the only Republicans are going to pass this, and that the focus should be on getting Andy Biggs in and getting other people in, but also more importantly and fundamentally securing the elections for this year in Arizona and making sure that those issues are taken care of. I know you've done a lot of work on that. Can you tell me about the link between election security, getting the right people in, and passing reform?
Yeah. So I know it sounds trite, but elections have consequences. Yeah. When you have individuals in office who don't do the hard work, don't do the heavy lifting, don't have the intellect to connect the dots on how do you reform a behemoth of a court system, you're going to have outcomes like this. When you have election systems that are insecure and you have simulations of elections instead of real elections, you're going to have situations like this. And this is, just this is such a small microcosm of what can go sideways in the policy setting body known as the legislature. Let's talk for a minute about election security. Very few people know, I'm going to shift gears on you here for a minute, but very few people know that under the NDAA, Section 6805, National Defense Authorization Act, Section 6805, there is now a requirement, signed into law by President Trump, there is now a requirement for every election system to have endpoint monitoring, endpoint testing, to verify that they're secure. You talk to elections officials all across the country, and this has to do with my other hat with the Election Fairness Institute. You talk to election officials all over the country, the vast majority of them have no idea what this is. Now we do. Basically, it is an outside of the fence, white hat MOU for friendly hacking, so that a white hat can actually come across the fence, get into your system, and see, was I able to penetrate your system? If I was, how did I do it? How do we set up a barrier for you so that I can't do that again?
Yeah.
That's white hat. That is legitimate white hat. Let's do some endpoint testing for security. So let's see how organizations respond to that. We just so happens we have Project 6805 available to elections officials that will be able to not only monitor but intercept nefarious activity that is intended to alter their elections, to manipulate, to tamper with.
The issue that you say, it's a rough issue for me, only because you said this is under the Defense Authorization Act, and the fact is, the French do paper ballots on the same day, and they're the French. They have the French waiting in the wings when they want to teach the Iranians how to surrender. Then the French will send some people over. That's just what it comes down to. How can the French get this right with paper ballots on the same day, and we're worrying about national defense authorization?
You're preaching to the choir, brother. I'm a big fan of paper ballots counted by hand on election day, where they're cast, by the way, so that they cannot be manipulated from point A to point B. The reality is that the American people, the American elections officials, I'm probably going to get crucified for this, have become so lazy. They just want push button. I want a solution that will just solve the problem for me. Computers can do everything. It's okay. They'll spit out a number at the end of the day, and I don't have to work so hard. Well, there's a reason that other countries have said enough is enough. And by the way, those other countries are now experiencing greater stability in their election systems. Amazing. How do you like that? So in the grand scheme of things, and I think you're asking the right question, Robert, how do we get there? The fact that we now have Nicolas Maduro in custody, who I am sure is singing like a songbird. We have the software now that we can analyze and show how it was written to flip votes. We can probably go back in time by pushing the Wayback Machine on some of these curated systems, because as you already, once data goes into a computer, it's never gone. You can delete things all day long. You're not really getting rid of them. It's archiving them someplace else on the hard drive. Okay. So we could probably push the Wayback Machine and see how many elections has a certain 3-letter agency that's had access to this software manipulated, tampered with all across the world for the last decade. Wouldn't that be something to put AI onto and say, which offices were corrupted? I'd love to see that project.
Yeah. And on this point, I'm going to switch gears a little bit, because you do have a law enforcement background and you do investigations. And one of the investigations that I think is most interesting was one that you were doing. I think you're continuing to do it, about Act Blue and the mortgage money laundering.
Yeah.
That it blew my mind. give them the overview, what's happening here, what the concerns are with
Yeah.
that.
Okay, so we're going to shift gears away from the legislative job that I have and go into my full-time job, which is as the executive director for the Election Fairness Institute. We received information probably 3 years ago now. Time flies when you're having fun, I suppose. About some anomalies that had to do with election campaign finance reports. Got digging into it, and where we're at today, we started looking at Act Blue officers because their names came up on some of the documentation for how the money was being laundered. Went to the county records to see some of it was real estate, some of it was mortgage loans, it's quite an involved architecture for this. And this is the kind of stuff that may take down Adam Schiff, Gavin Newsom, Tim Walz, a whole host of other people in Congress and in the Senate, by the way. I know you're really probably shocked by that. But the officers in Act Blue, we noticed a pattern. So we started following the pattern. And that led to other patterns, other officers, for example, the elected officials in Colorado, the Attorney General, Secretary of State, the Attorney General who wants to be governor, they're all involved in it. Okay. So we focused on Act Blue just because it was a single organization that had quite a network. Turned that information over to the Department of Justice, briefed the president through an indirect document, and a number of people, Tom Homan, General Flynn, a number of people, this was 3 years ago, we knew what we had. Well, since that time, we have now identified probably upwards of $6 trillion in money laundering. A good bit of it is international funds coming in through all of these political action committees, through this architecture that was set up by the Barack Obama administration under Arabella Advisors and some of that. Now, Arabella has since changed its name. When these guys get caught, they suddenly have a name change and a new board and all that stuff. So we know we're over the target. We've made our case to the Department of Justice. There are, I have to be careful here because we're working with them and feeding information to them. Let me say it this way. There are several U.S. attorneys around the country who are very interested in impaneling grand juries, ready to indict. They've already got the records because we've been able to furnish the records. One of the things that was very interesting, several of the individuals that were persons of interest, we began taking snapshots of images of the records because most of this stuff is online. And whenever we would get a LexisNexis flag that a document had been altered, we go back and compare the altered document with the original document. Amazingly, after President Trump was elected, within 30 days, suddenly these records are vanishing. These are records that are held with county recorders.
Wow.
So they probably realized when President Trump put out the tweet directing the Department of Justice to look into Act Blue, that the jig was up. Well, that was our work product that tweet was based on.
I just want to take a step back for viewers that may not be, fully understanding. It relates to like one of the ways for the money laundering, Texas money laundering, is the mortgages and title companies. Can you explain the mechanics? Let's say we have, candidate X, and we have foreign agitator Y. How would the money get from the foreign agitator where it shouldn't come from? We shouldn't have foreign money in our elections. How do they use these mortgages and these title companies to get it from X to Y or from Y to X?
Yeah, so there's several vectors that this can happen by. I'll just pick one. All right. So you have an individual who buys a house for $250,000. You open escrow. You have a bank. We'll say Wells Fargo, because Wells Fargo has already paid a fine for money laundering, so it's no secret. Then you have the closing period where the American Land Title Insurance Company, ALTA, issues a title insurance policy. And you have Schedule B, which is all the things, the list of things that need to be cleared in order to close that loan. Okay. Closing day comes and bada boom, bada bing, Wells Fargo writes the check, escrow closes, the money is distributed to the seller from the buyer. That's how a normal closing would work in Arizona, for example. At the same time, though, you will see a sale agreement recorded with the same recorder, same date, for $250 million. Not 250,000, 250 million.
Okay.
Escrow's opened, escrow's closed. Where's the lender? The lender is a third-party cash supplier that wires money into an escrow account. Then the escrow account is closed and the money is distributed. Who knows where? Because that's a private transaction. Wow. These are overlaid one on top of the other. The $250,000 transaction is probably legit. Maybe legit. But that's the VIG. That's what the individual who's engaged in the behavior gets paid.
Wow.
The other money, because we don't have access to Finchem. Finchem is a system that the federal law enforcement can look up where's money coming from, where's it go. We don't have access to that. What we have in Six Sigma parlance, you have inputs, process, outputs. We know what the process is, but because we're not law enforcement, we can't see the inputs and we can't see the outputs. What we can tell the DOJ is, well, this input resulted in this transaction, and here are the players. And by the way, the fact that they then tried to obliterate that record, here's a fun fact. These happened perhaps 7 to 10 years ago. When they obliterate that record, it resets the statute of limitations to the date the record was altered.
Yep, you're right.
Boom.
And if it's a conspiracy, an ongoing conspiracy, and related to other transactions, it's the date of the latest transaction. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
You're 100%.
So that's one of the ways that it's done. And the reason that you don't have a lender show up in that transaction is because it's not a North American bank.
Yeah,
it's basically what's called a hard money loan. Now, the escrow agent's going to know who it is because they got the inbound wire. So law enforcement will be able to say the inbound wire, the outbound wire. Now, where does the money go from the outbound wire? Again, we don't have access to that, but suddenly you have organizations like Arabella Advisors and their new name, Sunflower or Sunshine or something, suddenly comes into a ton of money.
Yeah.
It's international money that has been coming in through, and by the way, TD Bank paid a $1.2 billion fine. That case closed just before the Trump administration took over the DOJ.
Yeah.
It would be what? Double jeopardy.
Jeopardy. That's right.
Yeah.
I know a fair bit about some of this offshore structuring, and it's scary because you can basically, quote unquote, launder this money through what are called, quote unquote, foreign financial institutions. And what's that? That becomes a insurer out of Cayman or Barbados, or one of these places. And where's the money coming before that? It could be mainland China, it could be Russia, it could be Iran, it could be anywhere around the world, and they're laundering it through these places. And it looks like it's a foreign insurance company or a foreign bank that's sending the money, and you don't match that next level too. That's a concern. Also, a guy that I can't stand, a scumbag, and I've written a lot about, is Mark Elias. What he did with the Steele dossier, using attorney escrow accounts and everything else, monitoring the sources of things like that. That also happens in this area. So yeah, it's a very scary thing, but I think it's great advocacy and awareness that you're doing on that perspective to see, a lot of the problems that we have in our elections, a lot of this money that we don't even can even think about going into the elections and how it gets.
Well, if people would like to know more about the work that we're doing, they can visit a website called goefi.org. That's goefi.org. We are privately funded. We do not do government contracts. We're basically a research and publication shop. We have a number of open projects right now. One of those is an extension for assisting the DOJ on research in the private sector. And our belief is the more we can feed them in the open source intelligence world, the less they have to spend their time. They can spend their time on the inputs and outputs. Now that they know what the process is and then we can identify all the players for them, that shortens the cycle time for them to get an indictment. And they don't have to pay for it. We're doing it for free. So we're 100% funded by small donations or big donations if somebody wants to help supply that. The other thing that we're doing is precinct mapping to try and help clean up the voter rolls. Let's see, what else have we got? We've also got a system called Ellie, which is a voter roll cleanup tool that a lot of the elections officials and county recorders around the country can take a look at. It would replace ERIC and is much more accurate. It can even identify where people have voted in more than one state in the same election. And then, of course, we're starting to help with the project 6805, which is endpoint monitoring. So there's a lot going on in the election that my Senate office is tracking. I have the good fortune to have an incredibly good staff, probably some of the best researchers available, both in the private sector and in the Senate office. So, bringing it back to the conversation around why were these bills held, I'm mystified. With hundreds of hours, reams of documentation, for individuals to say, for example, this Amber Snodgrass gal, to say that she wasn't listened to, that's just false. It's false. Did I personally return a phone call to her? Well, there's a lot of people that I didn't personally return a phone call to.
Right. Also, just because you're an advocate doesn't mean you know the right way to fix the system. And
that's why I rely on so many other people in a stakeholder meeting.
Also, there's no doubt that you brought tons and tons of people to the hearing. Is it possible you didn't return somebody's phone call? Yeah, that's possible. But, that's like a lame argument. There were tons of people who testified. So to say like this one person was the key, if you had just heard from them, then you'd understand everything. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then, of course, we've got the text where he said, your bills are dead.
Right. And that text came out before a lot of what he said happened.
March 18th.
He was saying, yesterday I did this, yesterday I did that. Well, as my understanding was yesterday was the 26th and the text message came out on the 18th. So, his plans were clear. You guys did great work. I think you have good to great bills, and it's a real shame if it's a legislative process. I think all of them passing would be Herculean, but some of these bills need to pass.
Well, it'll come back next year.
I have one final question, Senator.
Yeah.
And that is to the people that are going to be watching this that may have already heard about the bills, family court bills being blocked, or that hear about it from this broadcast or from other means, that, we're looking forward to family court reform, that had hope that family court reform might happen in Arizona and elsewhere across the country. What's your message to them? I get a feeling almost at family court, I was deflated in the last few years of the Biden administration. Where's America going to go? And I'm a bit happy now that Trump is in. I think that we have a country now again. Is the answer hold on? We're coming. Is that the answer, or is it something else? What can you say to parents and to children and to stakeholders and to people that see that the system needs to be reformed?
I know it's painful. And I can understand if people feel like throwing in the towel. But just know that there are people like myself, like Rachel Keschel, like Lisa Fink, Karen Warner. I'm sorry, Senator Karen Warner, Senator Hildy Angus, individuals who put their heart and soul into this work. Judges who are looking forward to having the right set of rules to work under. Lawyers who were begging to have some relief from bad actors in the courtroom. And even some of the psychologists who recognize that there is an out of control element that is more interested in billable hours than they are in solving problems. You know, one of the individuals told me that she had gone through, I think, 5 years and $500,000 in court-ordered behavioral intervention. The judge, they got a new judge in the case. The judge cut loose the psychologist and ordered a new psychologist. 3 weeks later, and $2,500, the problem was solved. That's an indictment of a system that is focused on the wrong damn thing.
Right. And it definitely is a system that's based on billable hours and conflict and not resolving anything. All right. State Senator Mark Finchem, thank you for being here.
Thank you, gentlemen.